Right now, I'm a junior in college, starting her spring semester. And it's around this time that people start asking the dreaded question, what do you want to do after graduation? And I think of job hunting as the Wild West, because at least with college, there are one or two websites like the Common App where you could submit all of your materials. But with corporations, they all have their own application process and website, which may or may not be accessible, and various rounds of interviews. For me, as someone in business school, most of my upperclassmen friends were starting to recruit in investment banking, venture capital, private equity, consulting, or accounting. And we as blind people are especially underrepresented in these fields. When I was recruiting with PwC last year, there was no one to tell me how to request accommodations for case interviews or how to make Microsoft Excel more accessible to those with visual impairments. My guest today, Kathryn Webster, plans to change that. She founded Together Achieving Dreams, which strives to increase blind representation in fields like management consulting, finance, and big law. She is an MBA candidate at Harvard Business School, and she plans to work for KKR, a global investment firm, once she graduates. She is super involved in the blind community. Many of you may know her as the former president of the National Association of Blind Students. And one of her greatest passions is mentorship, helping younger blind people find their way. I am really excited for you all to hear our conversation, so stay tuned to learn more about blind ladies breaking into corporate America. Welcome back to another episode of Legally Blonde and Blind. I am so excited to have Kathryn Webster, a fellow Legally Blonde and Blind guest, on with me today. I think I've mentioned this a few times before, but I first met Kathryn over Zoom during the pandemic at an NFB convention. And ever since, I always thought, she's so cool. So I'm really happy you're here with me today to share a bit of your story.
Marissa, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be joining you and can't wait for our conversation.
Definitely, and especially cannot wait to meet in person next month, which we will most certainly get to in this episode.
I know, it's going to be amazing.
So to get started, could you describe what your vision is like and how the world looks to you, just so people can get a bit of context?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, long story short, I was born completely blind, and when I was 2 weeks old, I gained vision in my right eye. So never have seen out of my left eye. But about 5 years ago, so I'm 27, when I was 22, right before graduating undergrad, I lost the remainder of my vision in my right eye. So total darkness now, but it took me a few months to even realize that because I was so used to seeing, I was so used to conceptually understanding things that it kind of was a bit of a transition to, okay, now there's nothing. And I still thought there was a little bit left. So transitioning after undergrad, started at my first job in DC at Deloitte. And that was my first time really having to hone in on my non-visual skills as a blind person working in consulting. So nothing now, but it's definitely been a journey of several surgeries and accidents and da-da-da-da. But here we are now.
Here we are now. The world is completely dark.
It is completely dark.
What sparked your interest in disability and blindness advocacy?
That's a great question. So I think I originally got into advocacy work partially from a legislative front. Like I wanted to do equal access to education type stuff. I wanted to make some sort of difference from an equality standpoint. I didn't really know what that would look like. So when I graduated high school, I received a scholarship from the NFB, and that's how I kind of started dipping my toes into advocacy work. Obviously later became president of the National Association of Blind Students, which I think further a lot of that advocacy interest in just working on Capitol Hill with different legislation that we were working on. And then also just mentoring students, which is quite frankly my favorite, most passionate aspect of working in the disability space. I think to delineate like career-wise, as you know, I'm going to finance. I'm at Harvard Business School now. My true passion is doing the outlet of working with blind, but that's not my day-to-day. So I kind of do it as a more, I love this, not hobby, but more of my passion and rewarding piece, less so what I think that I'm ever going to end up in more of the career-wise space.
That's a great point, because I feel it's really challenging to find your place in advocacy and how you can get involved with the time and resources available to you. It doesn't have to be a full-time job. It can be something that's a passion project for you, something that you pursue outside of that 9-to-5 day.
Oh, totally. And figuring out kind of what angle you want to take. So it's funny, in the NFB, I wore a ton of different, and still do, a ton of different hats in like working with the training centers or helping with Washington Seminar on Capitol Hill or whatever it may be. But I think over the past couple of years, as I've kind of found my place, the mentorship piece is huge. And I think, to your point, like figuring out how intentionally to spend your time on things that really do bring you joy is really important.
100%. And on that note, what inspired you to found your own organization, Together Achieving Dreams?
This is favorite thing in the world. For context, my dad passed away the same year that I lost my vision. So it kind of put a perspective on life for me, where I didn't care that I was blind. I lost the most important person to me. And I always wanted to figure out a way that I can honor him in some creative, but also very heartfelt way. And I was struggling with it a little bit because there's so many organizations helping blind people in the world, whether it be advocacy, membership driven, whatever it is. And
they all sound exactly the same.
They all sound the same. And I didn't want to overlap or compete against any organization. I'm very proud and very involved in the National Federation of Blind. And that's why I was like struggling with, do I start my own company or do we just do more efforts elsewhere? And what it came down to for me is every space that I've been in, whether it be Deloitte, HBS, KKR, which is the private equity firm I'm going to, I'm the only person in the room who's blind. And I hate that. Not for myself. I don't mind educating. I'm very strong in self-advocating for me, but there are so many people that would shy away from that or not feel comfortable, understandably so. So the biggest driving force to start Together Achieving Dreams Foundation, TAD Foundation, named after my father, is simply that I want to have us break into corporate America more. Like the 75% unemployment rate hasn't changed for decades. And at the end of the day, the 1 in 4 that are employed are typically in jobs that are accessibility focused, cane travel instructor, Braille instructor, whatever it is. And that's totally okay if folks feel that they want to go into that career, if that's what they're passionate about. But if they feel pigeonholed to go into that career, that's where I get frustrated and why TAD exists, because we want to break into corporate America in a really intentional way where it's hitting both companies investing in blind students, but also blind students getting the technical skills and the social skills to feel like most comfortable and competent in those spaces of work.
I think a lot of organizations, especially those that are focused more on parents or research initiatives, aren't really talking about this unemployment statistic and how much it impacts people's lives. I never knew that so few blind people were employed until I ended up in college. And it's a conversation I think a lot of people don't want to have because it's challenging to think about the barriers you might face, but it is something you have to talk about as you're starting to look around and think about your career.
Completely. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because society doubts our abilities, and then we doubt our abilities because society's pushing those stereotypes on us. But then we also aren't guided or directed into, say, management consulting, which is, what you're going into, what I had done. No one thinks like, oh, that's a perfect job for a blind person. And quite frankly, we're just like anyone else, right? Like the accommodations I need my first day of work is a screen reading software and someone to orient me to the building. That's all.
That's it.
That's it. And sure, like some people want devices, whatever, to each their own. That's totally fine. But it's very minimal compared to the productivity that we all bring to the table if we have the right skills.
Absolutely. And that brings me to, so for context, I'm in guide dog training as we're recording this, and one volunteer that I encountered quite explicitly said that they were surprised that I attended Georgetown University despite my quote-unquote handicap.
Oh, stop. That word needs to be zoned out completely.
Yeah. I think the words inspire and handicap are two that need to They need to be gone in 2023.
Yeah. That's our goal, Marissa. We got this.
But that speaks to your point that the expectations in many regards when it comes to going to college and entering these fields like management consulting or big law are very, very low.
Yeah. And we need to set that bar. It's really helpful to
see people who have done it before too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the biggest issue is many of us don't exist. So when I was in my first year of grad school and I wanted to do financial modeling, I had no one to turn to say, what is the most efficient way to do 30-year projections in Excel? How do I do discounted cash flows? I can figure it out, of course, but that's just more time consuming. I wish there was and that's of course where TAD comes in, but a very direct, streamlined way for people to get those skills in an accessible way super quickly.
You've already spoken about this, but what are some of the unique challenges that blind people face in corporate America?
It's an interesting question. I think my answer would be different from many, but short answer is people's doubts. I mean, to me, that's the biggest barrier is people just don't understand. There's discomfort. So I always break the ice to make sure others feel comfortable. But like no one I've ever worked with who's been a boss of mine has worked with a blind person before. So it's just a bit of I don't want to say shell shock, but like people just don't know. And once you show them that you're just like anyone else, then it's completely fine. But getting over that bridge does put more energy on me to make sure that they feel comfortable. I think in consulting in particular, just as an example, PowerPoint development, I'm not going to make the most beautiful slide. Many people who are sighted aren't either, but that skill is super important in consulting. It actually was more advantageous to me as an analyst at Deloitte to not be the one beautifying the deck, because then I was so knee deep in content, which many of my peers weren't, right? Like they were the ones
that's the just important part.
Beautifying the deck. Right, exactly. So like then I'm the expert in whatever we're talking about. And my colleagues, same level as me, have no idea. They just know they're making a graphic on a deck. So
they know what font they're using.
Right. So like unique opportunity, but definitely was a cool angle of like, people are like, how are you going to be successful in consulting? It's slides. And I was worried. But starting off, that's the angle you have to take is I'm going to be the content expert. And then you're the ones talking to the clients first and foremost.
I had an experience where I was in a consulting club and somebody reviewing my slides said, oh, your bullets are round and they need to be squares. They were so small that I couldn't even see them.
Right. Also, like, who cares?
Culture shock.
Yeah, 100%.
And that there's a difference between railway bold and railway semi-bold. Stop
it. Is there really? That's where I'm just like, I don't care. Like, tell me what you want. But it does not make a difference to me.
It definitely adds to professionalism, especially in a student group, I'd say. So I understand it to a point, absolutely. But it is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyways, you've mentioned, as you said before, that whether you're an HBS or Deloitte, you're often the only blind person in the room. So how do you handle interacting with colleagues and employers that have had little to no experience working with people like you?
I think I take it very individually. Whoever the person is, feeling out their personality and how they kind of approach things is the first go-to. So if someone is a super outgoing, confident, social, whatever, I'm going to have a very different approach than someone who's more meek and uncomfortable. So to me, I always initiate the conversation, make sure either crack a stupid joke or like just make sure that they feel comfortable. In that way. And then I also, I guess fortunately or unfortunately, constantly feel like I have to prove myself in those spaces by doing better, right? Like by excelling in whatever it is. So being super prompt or pushing out a really good product, whatever, where it's like, she's not different. Like, sure, there's this characteristic, but there's no other difference. So I think my go-to is just to get to know someone, ask them questions, get them comfortable with just the interaction, and then it's easy. But also, this is like the sad part that I hope our organization can work on. But the amount of discrimination that I've received now that I'm at HBS is zero. And it's because of the brand tied to the university. You know what I mean? So like, and I'm sure you feel the same way with Georgetown. Like once you have that on your resume, it's a huge help in terms of making sure Yeah, yeah. And then it's like, okay, if they're good with her, if Georgetown admitted her, like she must be okay. You know what I mean? So I think that helps a lot, but that's why we need to open those doors for other blind people to get into those rooms.
I felt that all throughout my life, especially in an academic sense. This idea
Yeah.
that you have to go above and beyond just to be seen as competent when it's assumed for your sighted peers.
Right, right. And it's the constant more, more, more that you always have to drive towards to just be seen as equal, like you're saying.
So, to address these challenges, what resources is TAD planning on providing for blind people interested in careers in these areas?
So our three pillars of stakeholder engagement, the first is the mentor program, where think undergrads paired with a blind and sighted mentor in their career field of interest, working with them on a quarterly basis on those technical skills. So all of our trainings will be accessible through some tech platform that is fully accessible. So if you think Wall Street Prep, like go on and download a course, you're not gonna have the same access point as an accessible financial model course. So making sure that they have all those technical skills and the social outlet. The second piece is 100% internship placement. So our second pillar is corporate partnerships, where we're working with companies who either have a vested interest in hiring blind folks or people with disabilities or diversity, talent, whatever it is. And then going the next level of, okay, you say that you want to do this. Why aren't you doing it? And the answer is always, they don't know, they don't have candidates. There's no pipeline. So our organization is going to provide that pipeline to the target companies that we're working with. So initially, the industries are finance, consulting, big law, and entrepreneurship. I see that broadening very quickly into different buckets of corporate America. But that's our second piece. And then the third is resources for parents. So as I'm sure both of us experience, like the way you're raised is pivotal in figuring out if you're going to be a successful person in life, blind or sighted, right? Doesn't matter. So working with parents who birth 0 to 6 years old who have blind and low vision students, making sure that they're set up for success with a network, with resources at a very young level. So that's kind of TAD in a nutshell.
I love that because you wouldn't think of 6-year-olds when you're talking about employment and career prep, but it really does start that early. I know, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me, I was raised in an environment where I was told I could do anything except become an airplane pilot. But I know for many blind children, that is not the case.
Right. And even now with technology, maybe you could.
Yeah, maybe I could.
Maybe we shouldn't do that, but like maybe you could.
But when parents hear this new diagnosis, their thoughts are they going to be able to drive? Are they going to be able to play sports? Are they going to be able to live a normal life? And I think a lot of medical professionals hyperbolize how quote unquote tragic blindness is and
Right.
make it seem
Right.
as if it's the end when really it's the beginning.
Absolutely. And there's so many solutions out there, right? Like technology has transformed the way all of us can work.
Like, I couldn't imagine going through college without the technology I have now. And I bet you in 20, 30 years, college students who are blind are going to say the exact same thing. So I'm really excited to see where that takes us.
Oh, absolutely. And even 30 years ago, of course, possible, but I don't know what I would have done. You know what I mean? Like with all the solutions that we have now, it's just such a different world.
Yes, totally. And so if people are interested in getting involved in any one of these segments, how do you recommend they reach out?
Yes. So we would love the outreach. Two ways. Tadfoundation.org is our website. Of course, shameless plug, our gala is February 25th. It's our inaugural one. So would love any and all to join us. And that'll be in Boston, Massachusetts. Of course, you can learn more at tadfoundation.org, but also just email togetherachievingdreams@gmail.com and we will get folks plugged in.
Absolutely. And I will be there. So if you want to see both of us in person and me with my guide dog for the first time at a working event, you will have to attend.
Yes.
And it's
And I
at the
can't wait
Harvard
to
Club
meet
in
you.
Boston, correct?
Yes, Harvard Club in Boston, Saturday, February 25th from 6 to 10.
Awesome. And so if people want to stay up to date up until then, are there any social media platforms? Any other ways do you recommend staying up to date?
Yes, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those. Together Achieving Dreams for Instagram at Together Achieving Dreams, Facebook, LinkedIn, same thing. So absolutely check us out, follow us.
The whole nine
I'd love to
yards.
hear from you. Exactly.
And finally, this is a very broad question, but what advice do you have for blind students who are interested in management consulting, finance, and big law, besides looking into it together achieving dreams, which is the obvious answer after this episode?
So 2 things. One is push outside your comfort zone by reaching out to people in those fields. There are so many connections on LinkedIn. Just messaging someone, having that initial conversation to get your foot in the door is the first thing. The second is just, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but be confident in yourself and try to challenge those stereotypes every day by being confident. And if it's not coming naturally to you, just try. Take it day by day, learn a new skill, do whatever you can to kind of just break that stereotype.
Yes, I agree. And LinkedIn is, in my opinion, such a powerful tool because you can easily find alumni connections that are interested in or are working in a firm that you like, and you can just send them a message, which is a lot easier than these giant networking events where it's really challenging for us to spot someone across the room that we know or run into the exact right person at the exact right time. So taking advantage of those digital tools is huge.
And don't give up. If you reach out to one person, they don't answer, message 10 different people.
And the worst thing that can happen, like you said, is they don't respond. And oh well.
Right.
Just don't make it sound
you have
like
nothing
you're
to lose
trying
but
to sell
time.
something.
Exactly. Simple 20-minute conversation is all you're asking for.
No converting them to your religion.
Exactly.
Being able to go to college and have that support system gave me the confidence to build my wings and be willing to go beyond my comfort zone. I mean, before college, I never had taken a flight by myself or used the train or a metro. I never used a cane. I thought I would never get a guide dog. There's so much that has broadened my horizons from college and the professional experiences I've had that all I can say is, just go for it, see what opportunities are available to you. But try not to stress too much. I know that's a lot coming from me because that's what I do.
Easier said than done. Yeah.
It is most certainly
but it's
easier said than
true.
done. But know ultimately that you are valuable, you deserve to take up space. And the way that I look at it is if someone is going to discriminate against me or a firm isn't going to be accommodating, one, that's illegal, and two, I don't want to be around that.
Exactly. That's the thing, though, striking the balance between, like, I want to educate, but I also don't want to be miserable, right? Like, if it's a space where it's not welcome, why waste your time?
Exactly. There are, as you know, because you've partnered with several organizations, several firms that do want qualified blind people in their ranks.
Exactly. And we can absolutely find them.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kathryn. I'm sure that a lot of my younger listeners will really appreciate hearing your perspective. Most of my listeners are within that college range or high school range, so we haven't had the experience of a full-time job and what that implies. So it's great to hear your perspective as someone who has done it before and is continuing to absolutely rock it at Harvard Business School.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. Door is always open. Happy to talk to any student. So really appreciate that.
Well, everyone, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode, and I especially hope that I will see some of you at the Together Achieving Dreams inaugural gala on February 25th. If you have not seen on my personal Instagram accounts, I have a guide dog. Her name is Smalls. She is a female yellow lab, and she is the most amazing, intelligent creature on the planet. For the most part, she did a good job at staying quiet while I recorded this episode, but there was one point while I was making the introduction where she decided to sit on my lap and start licking my face. You can hear that clip here. I saw a lot of people recruiting for investment banking, private equity, blah, blah. I have so much to share about my experience meeting and training with her, so if you're interested, keep an eye out for an episode about that next month. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to Legally Blonde and Blind on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your shows. You can also stay up to date by following my social media pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Legally Blonde Blind. You can visit legallyblondeblind.com for more information. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you soon.